So 1 Peter 2:4-5 says this, as you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house. So Peter speaks of Jesus and people in this passage in the language of rocks. He calls Jesus, of course, the cornerstone, the main stone, the essential stone, the critical stone, the foundation stone, and then he calls the people, the church, living stones. Now, stones in and of themselves, and I think you would probably agree with this, laying in a ditch or sitting on a beach or a pile of stones in an abandoned lot don't ever really look like much on their own. But as stones come together, as stones are purposed to do or accomplish something in unison, something amazing happens. That's how we get buildings, that's how we get cathedrals, that's how we get bridges, etc., etc., etc. Now, I would imagine that for those who have not yet surrendered to Jesus, the church, those living stones, as Peter calls them, probably look like rocks in an abandoned lot. It looks like nothing of any significance. It looks like any other pile of stones that we would see laying anywhere with very little purpose. But the reason that we look insignificant to those who are looking on is because those who would deem us to be insignificant don't know who is in fact making us into something significant. They don't know the cornerstone. They don't know who's brought us to life and who is building us into something of significance. We are stones of great importance, precious stones, in fact, but not in and of ourselves, the common humanist argument. We are special and precious and significant because Jesus, in fact, was willing to become like us and die for us, save us, bring us back to life, and then gradually draw us one day fully into his presence and into his image. Jesus was willing to become an everyday person, and because of that, we become very extraordinary people. So our sermon in a sentence before we move to our final song is that believers, like living stones, are joined together by Christ into a spiritual house of significance and purpose. So, our final song of the summer is Everyday People by Sly and the Family Stone. So this song was released in 1968. It became the band's first number one hit on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1969. The song was and remains a call for racial harmony and acceptance, with the famous refrain in this song, different strokes for different folks. Sly and the Family Stone were among the first racially integrated popular bands. Again, in the 1960s, this would have been a rather bold thing to do. But it was both male and female, it was people of color, and it was people of pale skin, all doing this thing together. And so this song actually became very much an anthem of the civil rights era, and in many different eras since, has become somewhat of an anthem for, acceptance and unity and love and things like that. The song's interesting because it blends a lot of different musical styles. It's got funk and soul, pop, a little bit of rock, and it sets the stage then for all these future genres, as the 60s tended to do, that we see emerge in the 70s and then a little bit in the 80s where they were confused, and then into the 90s and the 2000s, etc. Last thing I'll say is, that phrase, different strokes for different folks, actually enters into common speech because of this song. They say that Shakespeare, is credited with like hundreds of words, that he invents these words and they become part of the language. Well, Sly and the Family Stone took that expression and made it a popular one. So with all of that fun fact fresh in your mind, here is the song.
Sly and the Family Stone with one of their biggest hits.
We got to live together. All right. Yeah. And neither are you. We are the same. Whatever. You love me, you hate me, you know me and then you can't figure out the bad I've been. I'm everyday people. We got to live together, all right.
There is the yellow one that won't accept the black one that won't accept the red one that won't accept the white. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. It's moving
I'm everyday people. Yes. Thank you, Sly. So the eternal Son of God is given this incredible statement in the book of Philippians where it says that Jesus, though he was equal to God, becomes a man. And with that simple and profound statement, we are drawn into that truth that Jesus, in fact, becomes, Brianne, everyday people. That's why I can't let you two sit together. You guys are like the two in class passing notes. Shame. Too much flirting back there. There you go. Being found in appearance as man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Paul draws us into the very heart of the gospel, that Jesus came for us, as one of us, to save people like us. He doesn't remain distant. He doesn't remain wrapped in divine majesty beyond the reach of people. He humbles himself, and he takes on human flesh, and he walks among ordinary, everyday people. And notice the word found here, being found in appearance. That word matters because it actually flips this to our perspective, to the human perspective on what God is doing in Jesus and what Jesus is doing amongst us. And we, humans, found this to be true of him. To us, he appeared as us. The crowd saw him, recognizably human in every way. And yet, as Paul makes clear, the likeness wasn't an illusion. Jesus wasn't wearing a costume. He wasn't pretending to be a human being. He became human in every way, well, amazingly, miraculously, mind-blowingly, never for 1 second losing his divinity. And so when we look at his life, what we see about Jesus when he walks on the earth is that there are no ivory towers, there is no detachment from the rough, uncomfortable, painful edges of the human experience. He surrounds himself with fishermen, still smelling of salt and that day's catch. He surrounds himself with tax collectors whose reputations are stained. He spends time with widows who struggle and have ultimately been rejected by society. He picks up children who have no standing, and he says they're the great ones. And his glory then is not in keeping himself untouchable and elite, entirely different from the people he loves and the way that all the gods of the other religions do. As they look different and they behave different and they sit in towers and in temples, he comes to us. And this is the scandal and the glory of the Christian faith, is that God would come as us to the degree that he would even die as the worst of us and for the worst of us. You know, in Philippi, when Paul's writing this, no one is walking around with crosses on their chains. No one's getting a Jesus piece crafted. The elites and the ones of reputation aren't wearing these adorned crosses as a symbol of their excellence. The cross is shame. No one wants to touch it. It's an instrument of execution. It is reserved for criminals and slaves. And so for Paul here to say that the one who would share equality with God would be crucified on a Roman cross was to proclaim a deep, deep, deep paradox. This divine, excellent, holy perfection and power in revolting weakness. And yet God most beautifully and perfectly reveals his love for us in that setting. So the cross declares once and for all that God then is ultimately love, and that love expresses itself for people in self-emptying and self-sacrifice for the sake of everyday people. Jesus becomes us. And those words hold weight because he did not choose to be above us or just amongst us, but with us. He steps into our dust, he steps into our difficulty and our storms and our setbacks and our sadness. He touches the sick, he sits with sinners, and he washes the feet of a ragged group of disciples. And by doing so, he reveals both who God truly is and who then we are meant to be. And so these everyday people then, because of Jesus, actually become living stones. One more, Brianne. You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. So the image that Peter gives is simple, but it's also profound. As I said, stones by themselves, in and of themselves, are unremarkable. A stone on a beach, a rock in a ditch, a pile of rubble on a roadside looks like nothing of any kind of lasting importance. But when stones come together, when the right person says, I can see purpose here, those stones together become greater than themselves. And so by faith, Peter says, we are set into God's structure. Not alone, not some of us, but the church, all of us, set into God's structure. And so no stone, and we know this very practically, no stone in and of itself can ever be a cathedral. But many stones suddenly can do amazing things that no one might have seen before. Each stone is fit into the place of God's choosing and his design and his perfection, and then the strength and the beauty of the whole thing begins to emerge. And so in church, every single life and every single voice and every single person ultimately matters. In the kingdom of God, all matter. None are wasted, none are insignificant. This truth came alive for me sometime in 2017 when I was in the very southern point of Romania, in a small city called Giurgiu. I was there, and some of you would remember this, with my dad, because our church was exploring helping some Roma people establish a church and even build a church building, and how our church could partner with these people so many miles away to bring the gospel to that impoverished and broken place. So that's why I was there. I was not there on holiday, I assure you. And this one particular afternoon, our pastor host, took us to sort of the outskirts of the city. And we're walking around, and I can't explain how insignificant the landscape looks. It is overgrown grass, it's weeds, it's garbage, it's like animal defecations. It is just not very nice. And then there is this long pile of rocks, maybe about as long as this stage. And I'm looking at it thinking like, oh, I wonder whose mess that is, kind of thing. And I wonder what building was knocked over, and no one thought any more about it. But then the pastor tells me, sort of like somewhat subdued, as if everyone should know this, he says, that's an old Roman wall. And what do you mean a Roman wall? Like from the Roman Empire. And look, and he shows me this like small plaque, cobwebs and dust on it. And sure enough, saying this is a wall of whatever date from the Roman Empire at the time of whoever, and there it remains. What looked to me as rubble was in fact a remnant of one of history's greatest empires. And those rocks lay in place centuries ago, and they served the interest of the most powerful man in the world at the time. They served the interest of commerce. They served the interest of protection, of caring about their citizens, all their global interests. That's what those rocks once did. But in and of themselves, those rocks are very ordinary. I certainly didn't see the significance. Someone had to tell me. And the only reason that they became significant wasn't because I now went, oh, well, they are beautiful. I just didn't realize. It was because of whose hands have touched them. It's because of who had purpose for them and said, these should be here for this reason. I want them here. Just because of that, suddenly those stones become significant. Peter's point is that Jesus does the same with us. On our own, we may appear ordinary, scattered pieces with little shape, little permanence, little purpose, little history. But when Christ, the cornerstone, handles us and touches us and sets us into his building, everything changes. Because he redeems our life from insignificance. He fits us together into his community, not our community, his community, and he makes us amazingly, miraculously, a dwelling place for his very presence. The presence of God. I will build a house for myself, God said one day long ago to David, and then built it through Solomon. And now Paul says we are that house. Peter says we are being built into that house. The place where God is worshiped and his presence dwells happily. You know, we dismiss ourselves so often as unimportant. We make certain people in church the cornerstones, the main stones, the important stones, the adornment stones. Without those stones, surely we couldn't get by. But in God's house, every stone matters. None are expendable. If you remove one, a gap does remain. You overlook one, the whole structure becomes weaker. Sly and the Family Stone capture at least part of this thinking in that song. Everyday people, unity, living together, despite differences, despite different strokes for different folks. We've got to live together. But Peter takes it that step further. And what I love is that he says unity, being united into a purpose, being united into this idea of becoming a temple of God, isn't just about unity for unity in and of itself. It's about coming together for the purpose of Jesus Christ, who makes unity even possible at all. Unity apart from Jesus is a myth. Human beings do not have the capacity to remain united, I'm convinced, apart from Jesus. We are way too selfish. And so he takes everyday people with their differences, weaknesses, and histories, and he builds them together into a different kind of everyday people. Everyday people that actually become eternally everyday people in his house. And so we're not then just scattered stones lying around in a field. We're living stones, shaped and set into place by Christ himself. And then together, when we do this, we declare the beauty and the strength of Jesus Christ, who is both our cornerstone and our builder. And so all this food is ultimately for the purpose of glorifying Jesus Christ through everyday fellowship. And when we gather for our fifth Sunday, it is a good reminder for all of us, for those that love this and for those of us that feel like this is going to be a discipline today. It's a good reminder that diversity is beautiful, but diversity is never the final goal. That is not the end. A room full of different people may look impressive, but without something deeper to unite us, it will fragment very quickly. The church is not simply about celebrating difference, it's actually about celebrating the differences that now get drawn into unity under God. under Christ. Philippians 2 reminds us that though Jesus was equal with God, he humbles himself and he steps into the ordinary. And so to glorify Jesus, we imitate him by embracing the ordinary sacrifice of togetherness. Did you hear me? The ordinary sacrifice of togetherness. That God would find it pleasing as we lay down our self-interest and our schedules and our personalities to say it is good to be together. God is delighted when we are together. We glorify God when we bear with our differences instead of retreating into comfort and preference. And that's what makes the church so special and so uniquely distinct from any other gathering on the earth ever. Because diversity, as I said, cannot sustain unity in and of itself. There has to be something greater. And so the diversity of all of us from different backgrounds and different skin colors and different political positions and different church histories coming together, this is a testimony to the power of God to bring unity in diversity. I mean, a couple of us might be friends otherwise, but let's be honest. We don't really like each other, do we? No, I'm joking. That's not true. I tell my kids that sometimes, but people who would not normally belong together find themselves sitting beside each other in church. And they find themselves joined as family, not spectators. Not people at a concert, not people at a TED Talk, but as people that actually are being built into something beautiful. We're actually not here because of our shared interests. We're actually not here because of our ethnicity or our backgrounds. We're here because we've come to share in Christ. That's why. And when everyday people are willing to lay down pride and self-interest and preference, Jesus becomes lifted up and made more beautiful. And so our unity, our fellowship, our being together is more than tolerance and being kind. It is actually worship. And it declares that the same Christ who humbled himself to be with us is worth every sacrifice of humility and patience and bearing with one another in love. And so today the amazing thing is, and I'm just going to keep reminding you of this every fifth Sunday, we share more than coffee and treats. We share far more than that. We share Christ. That is what we're sharing. And that's why we do this, because we have come to share in Christ. He is our in common.